Picture this. It's a Tuesday night, you're sitting on your couch, and you're just staring down at your banking app. You've finally decided it's time to get serious about your future. You want to set aside 300, maybe 500 euros every single month. But almost instantly, you freeze. The sheer overwhelming choice of where to actually put that money just completely paralyzes you. Well, welcome to this explainer. Today, we are going to dive deep into the hidden math of building real wealth.
Look, we've all been there, trapped in that deep financial fog. You immediately start wondering, okay, which platforms are actually safe? What on earth happens with the taxes? And above all, there's this paralyzing fear of making a massive mistake and just burning through the savings you worked so incredibly hard to build. I mean, nobody wants to see their hard-earned money vanish because of one bad decision, right?
But don't worry, because the whole goal of this explainer is to take that financial fog and turn it into total clarity. We're going to walk through a really simple 5-step framework: the psychology of saving, the safety paradox, the wealth engine room, escaping the bank trap, and finally, the 5-point dashboard. And the best part? Absolutely no math genius or financial wizard skills are required for any of this.
Chapter 1. The Psychology of Saving. Let's start by looking at a massive, invisible hole that's currently sitting in most people's saving strategies.
Let's run a mind-blowing thought experiment straight from the source material. Imagine you save 500 euros a month in a standard, everyday bank account for 30 years. You'd accumulate 180,000 euros. Now, millions of people feel super proud of that discipline. But if you took that exact same amount and invested it into a standard global portfolio earning a historical average of 7%, you wouldn't have 180,000 euros. You would retire with over 586,000 euros. By just keeping it in cash, you are unknowingly paying a 400,000 euro opportunity penalty. That is absolutely massive.
If this math is blowing your mind right now and you want to master these hidden systems, take a quick second to hit that like and subscribe button. It really helps fuel the algorithm so we can keep bringing you these deep dives.
So you might be wondering, why do our brains fall for this cash trap in the first place? Well, psychologists call it the nominal illusion. Basically, we tend to view money in absolute face value numbers, completely ignoring its actual purchasing power over time. So your bank statement might say 180,000 euros, but a silent 3% annual inflation rate is constantly eroding that. In 30 years, those 180,000 euros will literally only buy what 75,000 euros buys today. But investing at a 7% return, minus that 3% inflation, leaves you with a 4% real return. That yields 343,000 euros in today's actual purchasing power.
Chapter 2. The Safety Paradox. Let's systematically dismantle the myth that conservative investments, like cash or bonds, are always inherently safer than stocks.
When people look at stocks versus bonds, they just automatically assume bonds are safe and stocks are risky. But the source material reveals a huge plot twist here. Safety isn't a fixed property, it's actually a function of time. Over a short 3-year period, government bonds are extremely safe, while the stock market can be an absolute roller coaster. But over 20 years, the logic flips entirely. Historically speaking, there is no 20-year rolling period in modern history where a globally diversified stock portfolio lost money. No way.
To put that into perspective, let's look at a real-world example from the data. Imagine you invested 10,000 euros in global stocks back in 2006. Now remember, that's right before the massive 2008 global financial crash. Today, despite living through that massive crash, your money would have grown to over 53,000 euros. That exact same 10,000 euros in high-quality bonds, it would only be worth around 18,000 euros today, which barely beats a basic savings account when you factor in inflation. Long-term, owning real companies is historically the most profitable and safest path, for sure.
Chapter 3. The Wealth Engine Room. Okay, so now we know stocks are the way to go over the long haul. Let's talk about exactly how to harness their immense power without falling into a very common behavioral trap. Now, your very first instinct might be to go out and buy shares of hot individual companies. Pick the winners. But hold your horses. The source highlights something called the ergodicity problem. We just naturally assume that the average individual stock will perform like the market average. But actually, scratch that. It doesn't at all. Trying to pick individual winning stocks is a massive trap that consumes thousands of hours of your time and, honestly, usually yields surprisingly poor results.
Just look at these numbers. Statistically, 11% of public stocks eventually go straight to zero. 40% suffer an unrecoverable crash of 70% or more, and over half lose money long-term. The entire performance of the global stock market is driven by a tiny 4% tail end of mega winners. Trying to predict which 4% will explode over the next 2 decades is literally like finding a needle in a haystack. It's virtually impossible ahead of time.
So,
What does this all mean? Well, instead of trying to find the needle, you should just buy the entire haystack. And this is exactly where index funds and exchange-traded funds, or ETFs, come in. With one simple, automated monthly purchase of €500 into a low-cost ETF, you instantly diversify your money across thousands of the top companies around the globe. By doing this, you are mathematically guaranteed to capture that 4% of mega winners. It's a real game changer.
And just like that, by completely removing the stress of stock picking, you've just saved yourself thousands of hours of anxiety. If you're finding value in this breakdown and you love discovering these kinds of efficient systems, definitely hit subscribe to stay curious and keep learning with us.
Chapter 4. Escaping the Bank Trap. Once people realize that stock picking is tough, they usually pivot to their second instinct, walking into a local bank and asking a nice advisor to just manage the money for them. And that leads us straight into our next trap.
Behavioral economics calls this the principal agent problem, or sometimes the agency dilemma. It is absolutely crucial to understand that in many regions, retail bank advisors have zero legal fiduciary duty to give you the objectively best product for your financial growth. Instead, the system itself often incentivizes them to sell you proprietary in-house funds that are loaded with hitting 1.5% to 2% annual management fees.
Now, 1.5% fees sounds pretty harmless, right? It sounds tiny. But just look at the sheer destruction it causes over 30 years on a 7% return. With a low-cost ETF charging a 0.1% fee, your total inflation-adjusted profit is around €163,000. But with a bank-managed fund charging a 1.5% fee, your profit drops to just €87,000. That supposedly tiny fee quietly devours nearly half of your lifetime profit. That's why learning basic DIY investing is one of the highest ROI skills you can possibly acquire.
Okay, so let's get practical for a second. To execute your DIY ETF strategy, you need a digital vault, a reliable brokerage app. The sources outline a few different tiers depending on exactly what you need. For beginners, starting with maybe 50 to 200 euros a month, apps like Trade Republic, Trading 212, or Lightyear are fantastic, low-cost entries. If you want institutional, global gold standard safety, you'd look at platforms like Interactive Brokers or Saxo Bank. And for premium, private wealth safety for much larger portfolios, there are options like Swiss Quote.
But hold on, before you just start clicking buttons, you absolutely cannot ignore your local tax laws. Capital gains, exit taxes, dividend withholding, the whole shebang varies wildly by country. The source material offers a really fantastic pro tip here. Structure your investments properly by using what are called accumulating ETFs. With these, dividends are automatically reinvested tax-free behind the scenes. This allows your compound interest to snowball even faster without triggering a taxable event every single year.
Chapter 5. The 5-Point Dashboard. We've covered a ton of ground today, from mental traps to platform tiers, so let's bring it all together into a clean, actionable checklist.
Here is your curiosity-fueled action plan directly from the sources. Step 1. Stop letting your cash rot. Remember, inflation is a silent tax. Step 2. Embrace global stocks because time transforms market volatility into long-term stability. Step 3. Ditch individual stock picking and just buy broad market low-cost ETFs. Step 4. Bypass those expensive bank middlemen so you actually keep your gains in your own pocket. And Step 5. Automate. Set up a recurring payday transfer and let compound math do all the heavy lifting while you sleep.
You know, the most expensive penalty in investing isn't a market crash. It's the cost of waiting. So I have to ask, what is holding you back from starting your own investment journey today? Or if you're already in the game, what ETF strategy are you currently using? Let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, stay curious.